Beardy and the Beast Media Club.
Ba-da-ba, ba-da-ba. This is a placeholder intro song.
Welcome everybody to the Beardy and the Beast Summer of Sequels. In this series, we'll be revisiting the worlds already explored by watching the sequels to films previously discussed. And today, we'll be having a full spoiler discussion of 1990's Die Hard 2. We will force those spoilers upon you like so many ill-conceived one-liners. If you've not yet listened to the original discussion of the first film, Die Hard, please consider checking it out. A full list of services we're available on can be found at beardyandthebeast.com. My name is Drew, and of course, we have our very own little dog that can't move its leg. Devin? So, Devin, was this yippee-ki-yay or was it yippee-ki-nay too?
I think your spoiler sums up my thoughts on this film. It is the least spoilery spoiler that we've ever done, but it sums up the film perfectly.
I can't remember which line it was. The one-liners were so bad in this film that I don't remember what they were.
Yeah.
They did not inspire greatness in me. There was one I remember, though. He did, an action thing, and then it paused, and it was just a still on him. And he, 5 seconds, like if he was counting in his head. And then he said the one-liner.
Yeah.
It felt so forced.
All right, let's start. Let's pull a bit of a Drew here. Let's start with the good of the film.
Wait, we only start with the good of the film when we're going to shit on a film for like an hour straight. No comment, I see.
Let's start with the good of the film. As like a generic action movie, it did its job. You were moved from scene to scene. Always action-packed, always something going on, lots of explosions, some of that good old auto gunfights where no one's reloading unless there's some major plot point for them to have to reload for some reason.
Yep.
And in that way there, like the turn off your brain, just have I just want to watch some dumb action film. I think it did fine there. It did fine. The one-liners didn't land, but honestly, a lot of times one-liners don't land.
That's true.
For that early 90s action film, it's exactly what I expect. Could enjoy it from that standpoint.
I liked that they tried. So
and now that the good part's done, join us as we shit on Die Hard 2 for an hour.
Okay, so it's quite clear they went, oh my god, this did so well, we need to put out a sequel soon, and they just threw it out there, right?
Yeah.
But I feel like at some point, somebody with some narrative integrity went, maybe we can do something with this, and they tried.
Yeah.
But it leads into these molded styled characters that are just like rehashes.
A good way to put it is like Die Hard, there was a lot of character there. It followed somewhat traditional, I guess what feels like a bit more of a traditional action movie nowadays.
Yeah.
I think it set a lot of that format, if I remember what we were talking about a year and a half ago. Getting the one-liners, having that benefit of like a comedian stepping and doing it. And it really added a lot of character. The Christmas movie aspect of it, because I still think it was a great Christmas movie, really kind of played with that action trope. And I think it's why it has its identity. I think it's why it's so beloved. This movie had no connection to it whatsoever, except in name only and in character only. Like I felt all of that character, all of that charm was just gone.
Yeah, I mean, this one to me was like, oh no, last time we couldn't go below 35 miles per hour, otherwise it's going to explode. Oh, but this time it's on a boat.
Shout out to T-Pain.
I liked that they tried.
Yeah.
They tried to be self-referential with the whole, like, voice of the audience, like, why does this keep happening to me? The same thing happened last year, or whatever.
Yeah.
Tourists again.
So this is something that I know it's one of those things that, again, we kind of keep in mind when we're watching films, but honestly hasn't really come up much because we haven't looked at sequels much. It's that trying to look at it as part of the universe and as its own thing and kind of separating those two. And I think that's where I'm going. It's like, yeah, it was all right. Like it was kind of mid-tier action if I separate it.
Well, yeah, as soon as
This
you
is
bring it into context, it just falls so flat.
yeah.
It goes from a movie that I'd watch at a matinee if it was on its own to, within context, something I might put on in the background while I play video games, or I just want some noise in the background while I do some chores around the house.
Yeah. And even then there's better choices.
Yeah.
It's
I think in my head, like, my analogy is this one will require a bit of explanation.
Hmm.
You're a good cook.
Hmm.
You make really good
thank you.
food. Yeah.
Why, thank you.
I make okay food because I don't like cooking. I don't like anything
Yeah.
about the process. I don't find it enjoyable at all.
Yeah.
The original Die Hard would be like an intricate dish that you made and you wrote down the recipe.
Mm.
Die Hard 2 is if you handed me that recipe and I made the dish the next time.
I don't think you give yourself enough credit.
Is that because my food is fine, or is it because the movie's worse?
Hey, look. This movie's just worse. So
I mean, like, so we'll start in comparison. There is absolutely nothing about this film that Die Hard doesn't do better.
Agreed.
From our one man versus the world with no one who's actually got his back except maybe some, like, ragtag stragglers here and there.
And
Die
the
Hard
driver. Don't forget the driver.
Yeah. Die Hard did it better.
Mm-hmm.
Our correspondence over the air, or our remote person who's, like, helping either from the outside or another location, Die Hard did it better.
Yep.
The action itself, if we're talking the feeling the stakes of the action, seeing the repercussions of the action, such as injury, or the various situations they're in. For instance, John McClane in bare feet on the glass floor in the original. Again, Die Hard did it better.
Yeah.
About as close as Die Hard 2 got was the walking or the horizontal escalator thing. That scene with the SWAT team.
Yeah.
But then, even then, you figured there'd be some trading.
Yeah. So let's try to pick apart a couple of these things. So the SWAT ambush, I think, is a good example of that. In Die Hard, like, we were actually praising the gunplay. In Die Hard, there was things like you could count the bullets as McClane is using them. This was the my gun has unlimited bullets is how that felt to me. Except when it needed to be changed so they could somehow get a little bit of a leg up or something. Like that very generic action movie gunplay.
Well, like, it's even so bad to, like, nitpick it a little bit. Did they not have two magazines that were taped together? Like, everybody?
Yes.
And at no point did anyone take one out, flip it around, and put it back in?
Not one point. I think there was one point, not during that scene. I think there was one point in the film where McClane did, and that led to the twist reveal of...
Yeah, when the plot is convenient for it.
Yeah, when the plot was needed. It's like, oh, this is why it didn't work. Which, honestly, I, like, isolate it. The whole blanks thing was good. I actually liked that in isolation. I thought that was a really cool plot point. I don't think there was any setup for the major being a mole, essentially. And like, I suspected there was a mole, but I just didn't like. I suspect there was an inside job. I don't think there was anything set up for that guy.
Well, it's because
being it.
they made the ending kind of play out almost as if it was a heist without leading up to it, right?
Yeah.
It gives you the feeling of just trying to one up itself constantly without actually sticking to like a plan or a direction. It's just like, okay, we got to up the stakes. Oh, what if the military guy that came in is actually working with the other guy?
Yeah.
It doesn't telegraph anything.
I mean, they kind of had a setup for it, because like in a couple places, like both the main villain crew and the major's crew, I think they both talked about someone being out sick, basically, and needing to like change someone out last minute. But that's not the part that got played with.
Yeah.
Like, that was just
well, I just assumed at that point, I'm like, oh, I wonder if that guy was like a defector and he went over to this other crew and they'll do something with that.
Yeah, that's exactly what I thought. Right, which again would have been a cool twist. But nope, they didn't get that. The other thing you mentioned kind of in this was the tension. Right, the tension and the sense of harm that McClane was in. I can tell you that I felt more tense with McClane walking over broken glass than I did when they threw a dozen grenades into that cockpit with him.
That never explode?
Yeah. Oh, the explosions bothered me so much too in a bunch of places.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just giving it because it suits the tone of how not good this film actually is. So I'm gonna give it as a gimme just because they were bad. I'll
give most of them a gimme-ish. There's one that I absolutely can't. I guess it should leave off. These explosions were clearly set up because they had that big explosion of Nakamura Tower, the first film.
Okay.
That's the whole point of what they were doing. These are like, oh, people liked that scene. And I mean, again, I think we talked like that. Even that scene was over the top, but it was like really the only thing like that in that film. So in this one here, when they they killed off our boy O'Brien.
The
plane is forced to land because it has no fuel. I'm just gonna let that sit for a second. that explosion was at least as big as them blowing up the plane at the end of the film.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
And honestly, I understand the whole 200 feet thing causing issues. There's no way it would cause that type of issue. That is not, it's not like, oh, it's there like a mile in or so you're like going in super fast. No, at that point there, you've already hit the brakes. You've already got your landing gear out. You're going to hit the ground a little bit faster. The plane sure as heck isn't going to explode when they literally had no fuel left, and that's why they were forcing the landing.
Yeah, I agree.
And like there are some other ones that were like definitely like, yeah, that seems like a really weird way for you guys to do that, but I'll let those ones slide just in the general aspect of it. But as you said, everything this film can do, Die Hard can do better.
Well, like, and to expand upon it, I also mentioned like our voice on the radio, our external, our resource on the external, or at a different location. So in Die Hard, half of what makes that video great, that movie great, is the relationship between John McClane and Al.
Yeah.
That relationship they formed just based on people's voices and like the reaction when they finally meet at the end, right? That was half of the movie.
Yes.
We didn't get anything like that. But the closest we got to anything like that was the janitor?
Yeah, but it just wasn't, it didn't have the same, I can barely even connect those two.
Yeah. Well, I'm not trying to, I mean, I'm implying that it should be the same and it should be different.
Yes.
But they made an attempt, and it seems like they couldn't decide which side character was going to be most important. It wasn't going to be the police chief. So it was going to be the comms guy. It was going to be the janitor, or it was going to be the reporter.
Yeah.
There was no need for that reporter in the entire film.
No, I actually think she was insanely underused.
Yeah.
She should have been the person that he was using.
I think so. I agree. And I think that would have firmed up the movie quite a bit. And I think they should have combined the comms guy and the maintenance guy
Yeah.
into like a similar role. Of course, the like super ultra like high tier comms guy is gonna know about the routings and where like the cable conduits go and stuff. So he'd be able to give maps.
Yeah. Here's the perfect way that they should have used the journalist. Like, they basically did the same thing later in the film. It's like, okay, he's been cut out, which, cool. That gives that lone man, because it didn't feel that way because he was never cut out enough.
Mm-hmm.
But you have him cut out, and then you go to the journalist, who we know has got all this communications gear.
Yep.
And do what Dick did, where he essentially hacked into the comms in the cockpit.
Mm.
That's what should have been happening. Have that there and push it through. I mean, like, these guys everyone in this film just felt incompetent.
Aside from our main protagonist, the only person who seemed to have any competence to them was Holly McLean, and she did nothing except be a damsel in distress and tased a guy for something that didn't actually have any impact on the film.
Yeah. Had the opposite of any real impact.
So, like, that's another thing. Danger of the love interest. The original did it better.
Well, so that's one of the big things I thought. It's like, okay, the inciting incident of the first one was, McLean, he's just kind of there. Like, things aren't going well, but he's trying.
Yep.
And boy, was he trying, and was just thrown into this situation where there was no backup. There was no way to get a response in, no one there to help. It made the plot make sense.
Agreed.
Unlike this one here, where it's just like, he's here, happens to notice some guy who seemed a little sus, goes and tells the police, or makes a joke out of it because, he's the dick who gave me a ticket, and goes off on his own when he literally should have had all of the resources available. Like, what was your sense of danger here? Like, if anything, the only thing you should be trying to do is get some communication up. Nothing else makes any sense.
Yep.
I don't know, it just made it feel lifeless, and like, get rid of the airplane scenes. It doesn't matter. I think that's a big part of this. None of it mattered. None of it felt like it mattered.
Agreed.
They tried.
Yeah, I like that they tried. The overall stakes, the people effectively being hostages, was also underused.
Mm-hmm.
They should have cloaked it more in the hostage component. It seems like they touched base on that and then immediately went, we want this anti-communist military guy that's landing here. Like, for a reverse Ocean's 11ing, it did a poor job.
Yeah. Well, like that's a good thing. Like, so this is the first time I've seen this one. Honestly, before we started recording, the only one that I'd ever seen was the third one, which I quite enjoyed, which is why I was really thrown off with this one here as well. Let's have a bit of that build up. Let's use these hostages, right? We had the hostages being used in the first one.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there was consequences happening when something went sideways in the villain's plans. Stuff happened to the hostages.
Mm-hmm.
They did that once. It's like, no, just start bringing these planes down. You show you have the control. Give some tension, because right now I'm not feeling like there's going to ever be anything happening to Holly's plane other than it being the clock.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas if we start taking down other planes somehow, right, and have it scale, have it be some smaller things, like just, okay, well, people landed, but there's, injuries and such, and then to a plane straight up crashing and blowing up or whatever, right? Let's give some tension there.
Exactly. Well described. This movie as a Die Hard movie would be much better nowadays, because what they could do is just throw some tech at it. As in, they'd be like, I mean, mobile phones ruin most plots these days, but the tech that they could throw at it would be something like autopilot landing and takeoff thing.
Mm-hmm.
They hijack that and they can manipulate the planes using that function, right?
Yeah.
Like, that puts some stakes, and it kind of gives you an idea. During the first threat, they could have the plane coming in, at some crazy speed and angle and have it pull up and go back into the air.
Yeah.
It's like, do you see what's going on here?
Oh, yeah.
And then you can crash one later. Like, build up the stakes.
Mm-hmm.
And because they didn't do an adequate job at flushing out the stakes in the movie, because they were so high but so poorly expressed, it almost seemed like it didn't even matter.
Yeah. Felt almost like worse than that. Like the amount of holes that I can poke into this, apparently strategic genius's plan. I've seen, Swiss cheese with less holes. And it's all throughout. It's like, and things like that tech, right? Like, okay, well, these planes have tech. Like, they don't get their altitude from ground control. They've got other systems within the planes that are going to take over that.
Yeah.
You can't really fake that like they're trying to, right? Planes have landed in zero visibility for a long time.
Well, that's the thing. Like, we probably shouldn't go like individually, like Etha just ruining the entire movie. But I wanna get in on this because the only way that plan works of changing the automata or whatever,
Yeah.
the digital computerized one, is if there is zero visibility.
Yeah.
It just makes so little sense to me that was the choice that was made.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Around like the planes and everything as well. Just kind of we'll tackle it as a group of issues with this.
Mm-hmm.
So they're low on fuel, in bad weather, in Washington D.C., with no communications, and none of these planes divert.
None within a certain radius. However, that statement does not invalidate your criticism. So
Yeah.
I can guarantee that there would be another airport within very close striking distance.
Oh yeah, this is the east, like smack dab in the middle of the East Coast.
Like they had, what was it, an hour and a half or whatever the time frame was. If you're in a plane over Washington D.C., getting to another airport within an hour and a half is not difficult. I'm sorry, the logistics of it don't make sense.
So we've got that aspect with these planes. Second of all, I'm pretty sure there was a line somewhere where they're like, "Oh, we've got some of those airphones, so we can kind of talk to a few of the planes."
Mm-hmm.
But they never did anything with that. I'm like, okay, you can only talk to a few of those planes, and guess what? All of those planes have radios.
Well, and we already established that you can call the planes from the beginning of the movie. If it was a one-way phone call, that'd be a different thing. Oh, they can only make outbound phone calls. Okay.
Yeah.
Something makes sense about that to me, but the whole like...
See, that's where Holly would have been useful, actually. That's how they could have used Holly. She goes, something seems a bit weird. I'm going to call John. Now we have her there doing something. He's the only line of communication because the radio tower is a bunch of morons, or the air traffic control. So, okay, we're passing on some information. The pilots can relay that through to their radios because just because they can't talk to the communications tower doesn't mean they can't talk to each other.
And it makes McClane seem dumber.
Yeah.
At no point did he think to himself, hey, I just had a conversation with my wife an hour ago. Maybe I could just call her again.
And again, I'm pretty sure they specifically said that they called a few of the planes.
Without getting too ultra deep, I'm sure we can keep talking about this in comparison of this movie. My final wrap up of the comparative discussion, simply just to move on. I know we got more in the tank for this, but move on to the as its own. As far as a comparative thing, this movie would have been better served to have just been a carbon copy of the first.
Yeah.
But in an airport.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
No, thankfully it seems so much better now. when you think about this film as a unique and standalone piece. Our John McClane wasn't John McClane. I don't think our Holly was Holly. Yeah, none of the other characters matched it anyway. So people are going like,
Al was Al. I liked Al.
Yeah, Al was good.
The 30 seconds we had with Al. Should have been more of that.
Yep. And anyone listening to this will be like, well, Drew and Dev are not on it this time. But here's the thing. This movie had such a poor showing as a sequel that I can understand now that in the realm of sequels, when there are so many good ones,
Yeah.
that it has tainted the water for sequels to always suck.
Yeah.
There are many good sequels that just blow the originals out of the water.
Mm-hmm.
Like Terminator 2, Aliens, just like off the dome. I personally like Predator 2 more than Predator, but I might be unique there. So I think this one might have single-handedly created tropes. The sequels always being worse, and one-liners always being campy and forced. I might be.
Well,
I'm just saying stuff because I'm disappointed. I might be wrong here.
yeah, it goes back to a conversation that we really should have recorded but didn't. It's that idea of sequelitis, where they don't understand what made that movie so great, so they fall onto the spectacle. Right, the spectacle is definitely part of it, but that's not what made Die Hard great. It was all the non-spectacle parts, and that goes with almost any movie. The non-spectacle parts are the parts that will live in your brain.
If we were to divert for a moment here, the parts that made the original film great are our relationship over the radio, both of them.
Mm-hmm.
So we had a game of chess per se between the villain of the first one and John McClane.
Yes.
We had this unknown helper on the outside, and these two relationships with John McClane are kind of what define the movie.
Mm-hmm.
Has nothing to do with the fact that it was the top of the tower. I guess it does slightly have to do with like a over the top, probably ill conceived, but at least like understandable plan.
Mm-hmm.
Like they will catch on to us, they will cut the power, which means this magnetic lock will be turned off.
Yeah.
Yeah, shout out to things the first one did better, right? So these are the three things that made the original great. The rest was, window dressing and fun.
Yeah.
And it failed to deliver on any of those, where the sequel should take the stuff from the original, accentuate it, make it its own, and then try to make it better. Whereas in this case, it felt like they were phoning it in for a buck.
It's been a long time since I've seen Die Hard with a Vengeance.
Yep.
But I think Die Hard with a Vengeance actually works with that concept.
Wait, I remember, is this a thing? I remember someone telling me at some point that Die Hard 3 was a better Die Hard 2 than Die Hard 2.
I believe it. To explain this further, and again, my recollection of Die Hard 3 is a bit fuzzy, so details might not be completely there. But the radio conversation, that is a key thing with Die Hard. It's where a lot of that charm came from. Having these two villains these two opposing forces that have no connection whatsoever, when they're doing just that really cool cat and mouse chess game over the radios. That's it. That's all they know about each other. Die Hard 2 actively sabotages that from happening.
Well,
he starts it and then he's like, "Get off the phone, McClane. Oh, I've heard of you. Ha ha ha."
Well, that's the thing. Like, being able to showcase the personalities, all it ended up reducing it to was not showing John's personality, but just like John yelling at people or people yelling at John.
Yeah. Die Hard 3, so Die Hard with a Vengeance. Again, this is fuzzy. This took that communication to how it should have been. The antagonist knows who he's dealing with.
Mm-hmm.
And they have all their conversations over like payphones and radios, and the villain strings him along while he's working on his other plan.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they took the really cool concept that made it unique and kicked it up a notch. Again, using the fact that everyone knows who he is because, he stopped tourists twice.
Yep.
And build on that. And I believe there was like a very personal connection to that as well. You know, I believe there's like an active threat on his kids in that one, if I remember correctly, too. And that's why he's roped into it.
Mm-hmm.
The spectacle, again, doesn't matter. That's what I remember.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. I'm not mad. I'm just disappointed.
that's a way to put it.
It's just it stripped everything that I enjoyed about the first film away and left me with the bits that I could take or leave. Now, as a popcorn action flick standing on its own, it's fine.
Yeah.
Again, a matinee.
Yeah. If I want to shut off my brain and just munch on some popcorn, yeah, it's all right.
It's got some standardized tropes. It's got some gunplay. It's got a silly twist.
Yeah.
Sure. It doesn't wow to any factor.
Yeah.
There's nothing special about it, except maybe for the fact that T-1000 was in it.
Yeah. Oh, you've done better sequels. Yeah. And so, I mean, just looking at it on its own, there's a couple things that just, like, cinematography wise, it just jumped out at me and just actually took me out of the film. One of the things was really small, and one of the things I think was much larger. So the small thing, just to get that out of the way, when the annex scene that we talked about earlier,
Mm-hmm.
you know, you see all of the shell casings everywhere, which again just shows how they handled the gunplay in this here. And there was one shotgun shell sitting amongst them all, and I'm like, where was the shotgun? It jumped out at me enough that I actually had to note it. The other big one was like during the climax of the film. First of all, I'm pretty sure that runway was longer than the one in Fast and Furious.
Space.
But so like I don't mind the fight on the wing of the plane, whatever. But when he's coming out to you know stop John McClane,
Yeah.
and they don't see him anywhere, and he steps out, and John McClane jumps on him from above. I can't even allow in like just the schlock action films. Like I would accept it in something like Naked Gun.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Like that type of thing. I'm like, this is like a literal impossibility. What were you going for?
Wait, you're saying Die Hard 2 wasn't the sequel to Naked Gun?
Maybe it was a sequel to Airplane. Yeah, those two things just really like took me out of the film. Again, the first one for no good reason just seemed super weird. And then yeah, just like that fight made no sense. I don't get it.
Well, you mentioned the gunplay a bunch, and in the original there was probably one scene, maybe two, that I didn't like that involved the gunplay, and it was people just hip firing automatic weapons.
Yeah.
In this case, it really seemed like they were just blind firing, hip firing, spamming bullets on every weapon.
Mhm.
Even John McClane, like, he'd jump on the ground, just bang, 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 bang. You feel like if this guy is such a badass, he would try to line up a shot?
Yes.
One shot, even?
Just one. That's all we ask. It's not that much. Like just once. I have no idea how much crossover there was between the two films, like production side. I'm assuming none. It's
that is something to look up. This is going to be a good comparison. So, Die Hard, director John McTiernan, based on a novel by Roderick Thorpe, screenplay Jeb Stewart, Stephen E. Souza.
All right. The director of this one here is known for fantastic things like A Nightmare on Elm Street 4, Cliffhanger, Deep Blue Sea.
Wait, do we like Deep Blue Sea?
The Great was a little sarcastic.
I mean, I liked Last Action Hero, but I mean, Hunt for
Last
Red
Action
October, freaking Predator.
Yeah, but that's the director of the first one.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
no,
when
this
we
is
go to
the director of the second one.
Yeah, if we go to Die Hard 2, so a different director, Rennie Harlin.
Yeah.
The writers are D'Souza, Richardson, based on a novel by Walter Wager called 58 Minutes.
So I'm gonna look at the writing credits here for D'Souza. Let's see. It's always Knight Rider, Drew.
I mean,
Commando.
different writers for the novels based upon.
Yeah. Okay, so the writer screenplay says is the same for the writer. Okay, the writer himself isn't bad. I mean, like, and Hudson Hawk was good. Tales from the Crypt. No, that was a TV series, not the movie. Like Beverly Hills Cop 3 was all right. The original Judge Dredd was written by this guy.
So here, I think this is where it falls apart. So two unrelated books.
Yep.
Turned into movies with what is supposed to be the same character, similar circumstances. I think that's probably where they went wrong. They had the original book, they adapted it, they did a screenplay, created Die Hard, etc., and it was a good thing. But then they got this other book and be like, oh, wouldn't this be good as an addition to like the John McClane? And what they should have done is they should have just rolled with the things that they created in the first.
Yeah, that's part of it. Like, it's why license a book with no connection like that? And that's weird. Yeah, I don't get it.
I'm even going.
I think that's a difference just with the writing while you're looking that up. I feel like the writer of the first book for Die Hard, I think you might have been involved a little bit more. I don't remember if that's 100% accurate, but
All I know is one of the things I was just checking up to make sure I'm not just a big a-hole here is to make sure it wasn't just a continuation with the same character, just different writers. And it's not. It's Frank Malone and John Leyland.
Okay, so no connection.
The only real comparison is that it's a NYPD, either current or former, and hostage situation.
Yeah.
It's like, let's just repurpose this other book. I'm just done with this movie.
Got a couple character things for the villain and the setting of the film that, again, just kind of makes us go, really? This was a decision?
Well, we already talked about how we didn't get to experience any of John McClane. Jeez, I can't believe I forgot John McClane. We didn't get to experience any of the cool characteristics of John McClane, except Shootsgunpunchguy.
Yeah.
The main villain. No real purpose to naked yoga.
I believe it was naked Tai Chi.
Sure, and then he speeds it up, and on the wing of a moving plane, he beats up John McClane.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. That's the purpose of it.
The Tai Chi, the naked Tai Chi.
Yes. Because in reality, what was going to happen is it's just going to drop trow, just, start slapping John McClane around with it.
Well, and I could buy a disgraced, army person, just Red Scare around every corner, right?
Yeah.
Like, I can buy that character, especially at that time. The trope wasn't foundational yet. Like, it hadn't been overused. It wasn't a massive part of the zeitgeist yet.
Yeah. Well, this was the end. Like, this was technically post-Cold War.
No, but what I mean is, like, they always establish the villains like that.
Yeah.
These days, either like, secret anti-communists or secret communists, and they just want to kill everyone. There's no real difference in these movies. It's the same character, just who they curse at. So it's not a good character trope, but I think this is probably before that trope had solidified, in my opinion.
Yeah. So it's not so much like the tropiness of the motivations and such. It's the believability of him being this mastermind, like we had with Rickman in the first one. Kruger, was it Kruger? I can't remember. Like, if you want to step up someone like
and
Rickman's character from
Hans Gruber.
Yeah, it was Gruber. So if you want to step up someone like Gruber, I almost expect to see something. This is, I guess, a little bit before that trope, a little bit more like Thanatos from Gargoyles.
Okay.
Right? It's the I always win because I have a plan, and I've planned for the plan, and I've planned for that plan too. Right? And so, no matter what happens, you've got a win condition. And you can flow through that. It's one of these things that I like from the time when I GM'd, because I'm a nerd. Like, I got to the point where I stopped caring about what the player characters are doing, and instead I shaped my games around the bad guy as a player character.
That makes sense.
So I just had my motivations, and this is what's going to happen if the players don't get involved, right? And then I have to move around that. It allows for a lot of flexibility. This is where, again, this planning just didn't make any sense to me. Let's hijack the plane in Washington, D.C., which for some reason is going to a commercial airport, not a military airport. And for some reason, they can't scramble the fighter jets to help with the planes because they can't contact the FAA because they don't have phones or something. That works. And then you've got these plans of like, okay, and here's this church where we've got all of these snowmobiles ready so we can make a quick escape, and we can go there to heal up in case something happens with the plane, and then we'll just take the plane from. And I'm just looking at all of these plans. I'm like, so you had 4 different escape plans, but the only one you could use was going on this airplane. So they expect you to be going to this airplane, and you don't fuck off into the middle of nowhere, find a different airport, find a different place. Like, what was your plan? Because you tell me you have one, but I don't believe you. And it took away all menace from this character. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk.
Well, I was just thinking to myself, like, you were outlining characteristics that are better found by John Travolta in Swordfish. When something goes wrong, finger quotations, it's actually one of the like preconceived things that they had already thought of and moved on.
Yeah.
Part of what made the first Die Hard so interesting is the fact that Hans Gruber is smarter than John McClane, but they're playing for different stakes.
Yeah.
Hans Gruber is what's in the vault and how is he going to get away with it, and John McClane is saving his wife and saving the hostages and taking out the bad guy. And it's the combination of different board games pieces on the playing field at a time and how they interact.
Yeah. I like that explanation with the different motivations, because it's that asymmetric gameplay.
Yeah.
Like, honestly, that movie could have gone very different. If he got his wife out, they probably could have gotten away with the cash. He probably wouldn't have cared.
Yep.
Because that wasn't his motivation. That wasn't his game plan. And that's it. Like, we know exactly what Gruber's motivations are. And John McClane, as the player character, is messing with those plans. And how does Gruber handle it? And that's what makes it dynamic.
Whereas the plans of our antagonists here, Captain or Colonel,
I don't even know. I'm glancing and not any of these names jump out at me as something I remember.
Yeah, I know. I mean, that's what makes it so, like, nothing about it stuck out to me. It was the antagonist of Die Hard 2.
He was never doing anything in response to what McClane was doing.
Yeah, Colonel William Stewart.
Stewart. So okay.
The thing is, in the first one, they were playing the same game with different a direction for different outcomes.
They were playing on the same board with different objectives.
There you go. That's a better way to put it for sure. Where in the second one, it was like they're not even playing the same game.
No.
They're not on the same board. It's almost like the plan was going ahead, but by accident, the commander that they were rescuing or whatever got shot by accident.
Yeah.
That's the only real difference. A couple more guys died than needed to.
Yeah.
Like John
Without
McClane's effect on the plan was minimal.
without McClane's involvement in the plan, without it, the only differences would be a few less people dead,
Mm-hmm.
and the bad guys would have gotten away. Very likely, we wouldn't have had the mass panic because things probably would have just went a bit smoother and those planes would have been able to land sooner. I am pretty sure that is the entirety of the impact he did. He did literally nothing.
Yeah, always being up late. I think the only major thing that he did that actually impacted the story was like call the comms guy in, regard and finding out about that house down the road, the church down the road.
Yeah.
That was the impact that John McClane had on the story, to be honest.
Yeah. But that didn't have an impact. Like, the only impact it had was they went to that church down the road. That was literally it. There was nothing impactful there because nothing happened at the church.
Mm.
Literally, no one got shot and killed because they were all firing blanks at each other because they were all friends and all in on it together.
Which we already established was not foreshadowed in such a way that
it was meaningful. Like, literally, that was the only thing that would have changed. They still would have crashed O'Brien's plane. Rip O'Brien.
Oh, rip.
Because they still would have tried to go to that annex, which for some reason they didn't have. I don't know. For some reason they didn't have ground crews where they could like do emergency lighting. He caused the one plane to land a little earlier than it like just to have that little bit of a gunfight with the guy. Like that was it. Like he literally did nothing.
I literally I can't believe I don't know much about airports, but I can't believe in my heart of hearts there isn't just some manual system that somebody can walk out and flip a switch and have lit runways.
Let's say they've cut off the power and all the auxiliary powers and all of that. You want to know what they would do for a manual system? What McClane did with the torches.
Yeah, I guess.
They would grab the trucks because there were clearly fire trucks and everything. Like they had trucks. You have a truck with a spotlight. You have some guys, and we know they're there because you see them all the time with their orange flashlights waving the planes out during taxi.
You know what I like?
Die Hard?
Yeah, I like the original Die Hard. Good movie. The power is completely on in the airport.
Yep.
These airports are ginormous.
Yep.
They're the size of towns.
Yep.
None of the lights were off there.
Mm-hmm.
This... You go outside and it's just windy.
Yep.
The visibility wasn't that bad.
Nope.
There's... No, I hate it.
You want to know what else I liked in that same thing? So they've got a bunch of military guys there, a bunch of Department of Justice guys there, Capitol, like the airport police, which apparently has their own SWAT teams, journalists all over the place because they know this high-profile prisoner's coming in. Not one of them could look out the window and say, isn't it weird that after all the flights go delayed, there's no lights outside? None of the runway lights are there. And not one of them goes, this seems weird. And it takes a guy calling from a plane telling them that there's tourists around.
Here's the thing. You stumbled on it way earlier. The major problem with this film. Washington, D.C., military plane.
Into a commercial airport?
Into a commercial airport. It just doesn't make sense.
Nope.
And that's it. So, then I guess it begs the question. Die Hard 2, the sequel, better than the first?
And
that's all the answer you need. And thankfully, fact of the matter is, even as someone who hasn't seen Die Hard, any of the Die Hards, I know just from popular culture that Die Hard 3 is far better than Die Hard 2.
Yep.
Therefore, I will not shy away from watching Die Hard 3.
Yeah. I don't know anything about the other ones, but I'd be interested to give Die Hard 3 a watch again.
Honestly, these type of movies just need to go full Fast and the Furious. I know this predates it. Just go bigger and more of all the things you love until you shoot a car into space.
All right. I was actually also going to compare this to Fast and the Furious.
Oh, this is Die Hard Tokyo Drift for sure.
Yes, that's exactly it. That's exactly where I was going with that. I don't even think I can recommend watching this one. I mean, maybe if you want to like Mystery Science Theater it, because
I don't think it's even a good candidate for that.
No, it's not.
It's like to the point if you like
that.
start tearing it apart EFAP style, it's just like, why?
Just to like, I know we're not. I think we're pretty done with this.
Oh, I was done with this like halfway through the movie.
Oh yeah, but don't bother watching the film. The last 5 movies we recorded here has less notes combined than the amount of problems I found watching this movie.
Keep in mind, we also watched Ghosts of Mars, so
yeah, but that is one of the ones here. You know, from like honestly, A Girl Who Leapt Through Time, Sin City, Mean Girls, and Ghost of Mars has less notes combined than the issues I found with this movie.
So moral of the story is
don't watch Die Hard 2.
Yeah. In your Die Hard marathon, you should watch Die Hard, Ghosts of Mars, Die Hard 3.
Yes.
Because Ghosts of Mars makes as much sense being a Die Hard movie as Die Hard 2 does.
Yep.
Anyways, I don't know if I have a real conclusion here. I'm just dissatisfied. I'm going to end it.
Yeah.
Dean.